Good morning. Welcome to the January meeting of the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board. Thank you for joining us today. As normal, we start each meeting with public comments. So we have one public commenter registered, Mager Confer Hammond. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Jessica. Am I first?
Hi, go ahead. Yes, you're first.
Good morning, everyone. I have to admit that I had a hard time preparing today's public comments, and certainly not due to the HOS Advisory Board. I had a very busy day yesterday, followed by being glued to the TV and the news in the events of our nation's capital last night. And I raised that in this context, both for its overwhelming impact and to raise that I simply, as I know you all believe in, that there is no more important activity within this context than addressing white supremacy and equity. And in this context, that is within housing. And so for the conversation today, I simply implore that we move forward on establishing the creation of committees, and certainly in my viewpoint, in the Fair Housing Partnership's viewpoint, that the most important committee at this time is establishing a Fair Housing Committee that provides an equity lens into the goals and outcomes of what the programming is to have, with clear milestones for assessing those goals, throughout the year. To share, I will say, in terms of what's happening nationwide on this topic, this is an unknown topic in the space of creating meaningful solutions. As you understand, advocates have been begging since the creation of the Fair Housing Act, since the determination of the Kerner Commission in 1968, that there are two separate Americas, one Black and one white, that we must make and take meaningful action in order to make change. Over December, the city of Boston passed brand new, the first of its kind legislation, not simply upholding the concept that at the local level they support of firmly furthering fair housing, but that they are going to take concrete action. I can share with you all later with more time the specific actions called out by the Boston legislation, in which the city as a whole will review and require developers and housing projects to identify the fair housing impact of their projects. This identification does not stop development. It doesn't mean the development doesn't happen, but it means that the facts of the impact are included in the conversation. Additionally, if you are following in Oregon, if you understand Oregon's history, you understand that Oregon as a state excluded and removed all of its Black population at the creation of the state. And so the Black population in Oregon is overwhelmingly small, across about 2% of the state population. As a result, the city of Oregon during the pandemic passed legislation in creating the small business loan for Black business owners, specifically in carving out a 4.5% of its pandemic relief money to address equity, to address ensuring that Black small business owners had access to the relief funds. That case is in litigation, and following that litigation and understanding how equity is implemented, what the litigatory arguments are, and how to address it in a meaningful way in terms of the solutions being invented now across the country. And I implore the board, I know the board supports it, but this is going to require real effort, real meetings, real conversations, and time, our time together to create these solutions in a way that will have a true impact to address the systemic racism and the other inequities that exist across the protected class in the status quo in the way that our development and housing creation works. So I welcome and I appreciate you all for listening, and I thank you for investing in this time. And I ask that we all work together to find these solutions, because we have to create them. And at least in our small corner of the world in Pittsburgh, that we will find these solutions and implement them to make real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. As far as I'm aware, there are no other registered public comments. I'll give staff a second to shout out if I'm incorrect about that. Okay. So with no more public comment, we will move on to call roll.
Jessica, could you please do the announcement for ASL interpretation?
Yes, on your screen there, please view and pin Avery Jefferson's video to your screen to follow the ASL interpretation. So let us call roll. Lena Andrews.
Here.
Oliver Beasley. Not here. Jamel Bay.
Here.
Joanna Deming.
Here, sorry.
I believe she's here. Okay. Knowledge Bill and Hudson.
Here. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year, everybody. Jerome Jackson. He emailed me and said he would be late. Teresa Kell-Smith.
Here.
Mark Masterson.
Here.
James Myers.
Here.
Paul Spradley. Not here. Sonia Tillman.
Here.
Derek Tillman.
Here.
Diamante Walker. I believe she's here. Adrian Wanahall.
Here.
Kelly Ware Seaburn.
Here.
Megan Winters.
Here.
Thank you. Let it be known that we have a quorum. So next, review and acceptance of minutes from December 3rd, which were emailed to the advisory board earlier this week. Does anybody have any questions?
Move to approve.
Mark moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Adrian?
No, that was me, Lena.
Lena, thank you. Mark approved. Lena seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a really cool, awesome announcement today. A lot of you may have read in the paper, and we did alert the advisory board before the holidays that Councilman O'Connor asked that some funds from his district be reallocated into the Housing Opportunity Fund. So what that means is the fund is generally funded at $10 million a year from city funding, and this will add an additional $1,958,000 to the 2021 allocation. And when it went in front of council to be added to the Housing Opportunity Fund, the council legislation is as what was on your screen, stating that the Housing Stabilization Program would receive another $808,000, demonstration dollars would receive another $400,000, legal help would receive another $550,000, and then administration at $200,000. And then additionally, it's not on the slide because it's not HOF money, but it also included $500,000 to go to the URA in the form of CDBG for the rental gap program, especially as it relates to preservation developments. So I want to thank the city, Councilman O'Connor and his district, and city council and the mayor's office for reallocating these funds. You can see here on the screen, Bettina just put up a slide that shows, you know, the additional 1.958 and how that relates to what you approved a month ago. So if you just take the 2021 column, plus the additional column, you could see that means, for example, another 1.3 million and some change is going into HSP out of 2021, and then the demo dollars will have 800,000 of demo dollars into 2021 HSP, etc. So once again, this is just fabulous news. I open it up for discussion, but basically, according to the legislation, the role of the advisory board is to, help us allocate the funding each year and to approve it. This is a little bit different because it's additional money that came with the line items already in place. So the wording I put on the agenda for today is acknowledging and accepting the additional allocation. So after any discussion we have, I believe that would be sort of what I would ask a member to recommend, is that the advisory board acknowledges and accepts the application. So okay, I open it up for discussion.
I think it's great news. I don't know if there's a whole lot of discussion right now that needs to occur. I'd be willing to make the motion to acknowledge and accept the allocation, and also would like to thank Councilman O'Connor for doing this, because HSP and hopefully with the demo dollars getting used in a way that's going to support some of the stuff that's going to be that is a continuing impact with the pandemic. And with legal help, also helping folks that are struggling right now. I think this is really great news.
Jessica.
So Mark made a motion. Is there a second?
Second, and with discussion.
Okay, so Teresa Kell-Smith seconded. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you. I just want to also thank Councilman O'Connor and City Council, and I want to acknowledge the work that he and Dan Gilman did together, working together on this to make sure that council felt comfortable moving it forward. So I just want to thank everyone for all their work and working collectively. It shows what we can do when we work together for the betterment of our people. So thank you to everyone.
Yes, and thank you, President Councilwoman Kell-Smith, for your work on this as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed to this? I can't imagine. All right, motion carries. Thanks. I didn't mean to
Jessica.
push discussion, though. If there is more discussion, please go ahead. Go ahead, Adrian.
This is not really directly related to the money, but tangential. So really thinking through, as these programs are going forward, a more robust analysis on impact. We've certainly appreciated the URA's data that they've provided. I think particularly for housing stabilization, it's incredibly important to not only talk about folks served, but also talk about depth of the problem and performance of providers in the community to get the money out on the street in a way that is fast, is manageable by the folks in need, and is done in such a way that it can avert a crisis. That includes, timeline of how long the application process takes, how onerous the application is, how long it actually takes from a completed application to money being allocated to an individual, to a landlord. So I think it would be great, as we are getting to that point where we probably do have enough data to really start diving, to not forget that the analysis of how these programs are impacting our community is really critical.
Absolutely. And, we can talk more about the analysis, possibly a committee structure, and the URA itself. We're creating a lot more metrics for analysis right now as well. Anything else as it relates to this topic? Okay. If not, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the recommendation for approval for the final bylaws and chair description. So as you all know, we entered into a contract with HR&A Advisors, who was the group that helped us originally get started with the HOF to draft bylaws for us that talked about the operation of the advisory board. And there was also a section in there that talked about the chair description as well. But you can see here on the side of the slide that the core components of the bylaws are the voting and participation, board responsibilities, public engagement, working groups, officers, and at the end of the bylaws, it does reference the conflict of interest document that you all signed and talked a little bit about that. You saw a draft of it publicly at last month's meeting. Advisory board had a couple-week opportunity to put comments in. We did not receive too many comments, but I took the comments that we got and talked to HRNA advisors, who then produced, the final document that I sent to you earlier this week for review. So all advisory board members should have that document right now. And so I open it up to discussion with, I think the goal being if the advisory board is comfortable with the document, that someone makes a motion to accept the bylaws. So I open it up to discussion.
Can you highlight any changes from the last time we reviewed them? I didn't see anything that stood out.
No, there really wasn't. We received very little comment from the advisory board. I know one comment we received was about the addition of non-advisory board members to committee structure. The document does not speak to that. The document is for the use of the advisory board and to talk about the role of the advisory board members. So HRNA advisors, did not feel like they should make a ruling on that, at this point. So that was not included. There was just a couple of clarifying sentences. We added, sentence to make sure that there's a statement that there would be interpretation provided at these meetings, a couple of statements like that, but there was no major change to content.
I know for me, the holidays was a bit challenging to get my feedback in, but I knew I provided a lot of it at the meeting itself and got a lot of, in the minutes, I know there's a lot of responses to that feedback. My main concerns are making sure the staff is committed, to the working groups so that they're functional, not that you guys had to manage them, but that we had enough collaboration that we could function. And there were some other things, but.
Yes, and we did, HRNA and I did look at the minutes and made sure that the comments that were in the minutes were, somehow addressed in the document as well.
So
If
I
there's no
recommend we
other com-
approve
go
the
ahead.
final bylaws and chair description.
Second, Sonia.
Adrian motioned, Sonia seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody oppose or abstain? All right, motion carries for the acceptance of the bylaws. Okay, next. So within the bylaws and is a description of the chair. So just to kind of recap a little bit of history, the advisory board yourselves asked the URA to help draft a chair description, which is, one reason why we contracted with HRNA for the bylaws. So this is the description that is part of the bylaws as it relates to a chair. And so this describes what a chair would do if a chair is elected from the advisory board. I sent an email to the advisory board members, basically stating that just from, operating this myself and also understanding, what all these activities would entail, I would estimate that this is a relatively significant time commitment for somebody to make. And I also, wanted to make sure that all advisory board members fully understood the conflict of interest policy and really thought about how many times they would need to abstain from votes given what their own organization would be doing. And the bylaws themselves also speak to needing a chair to have at least a year experience on the advisory board. And I think the bylaws mention for people actually representing government seats that they not chair the advisory board. And so those are sort of the rules. So at this point in time, I'm going to pass it over to Adrian as a member of the advisory board to kind of monitor this discussion about a chair. So Adrian.
Thanks, Jessica. I think this is an exciting moment as we've evolved as a group to be able to take more time, take a look at more data, have a more robust structure to the work that we do, not only as board members, but also engaging members of the community, engaging thought leaders, engaging expertise in our conversations through establishing things like committees. One of the things that we've been talking about for quite some time now is the establishment of more of a chairship structure here in the board. Obviously, our URA partners are going to continue to have a lead role in these meetings and continue this deep collaboration, but it's important that the advisory board take on leadership of its own, including a chair and a vice chair. So I wanted to engage a conversation with the group about electing a chair and a vice chair. We would love to today, if we have the opportunity, to make some decisions about a chair and a vice chair. We've approved these bylaws. We have said for quite some time that this is a critical piece of the board's activities. So if we can discuss today the role of the chair and vice chair, have clarity on those roles, and have a discussion about how we are moving forward, including electing a potential chair and vice chair today. So I'd like to open up first to comments, thoughts on the discussion, on the creation of the chair, vice chair, concerns of board members.
Adrian, I have a question and kind of a comment. So with the conflict of interest policy, is it basically just the same that if considering your work, you would abstain from votes the same way you did as a board member if you're the chair, or is there an additional nuance?
I think that that's a key item. I think it is abstaining from votes in relationship to any conflicts of interest that may emerge. But it's also interesting when we think about both the video meeting format and the in-person meeting format, folks with a conflict of interest are part of the dialogue, absolutely. It's just having an extreme level of transparency as to where the conflict lies and how it could impact both your ability to have a neutral stance, as it is outlined in the chair description, being able to disclose, qualify conflicts of interest that exist, and be able to steward a conversation through that neutral lens. So I think it is a bit more nuanced, but certainly an extension of how we've been operating as board members to date.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a bit of hesitation, and I'm willing to set that aside if the group does not have it. But I would like to have conversation, possibly nominations this month, and perhaps vote next month. Having only, it was sent out on the 5th, and I didn't get a chance to look at it until last night while my brain was fully occupied by chaos. And so I would prefer not to make a decision that's going to be with us for a year at this particular moment, given the amount of time I've spent with it and thinking about it with this new structure of when you're voting, when you're not voting, who's eligible or not. That's just my personal preference. I'm willing to go along with the group, but just
one of
I concur, Kelly. Kelly, I agree with that. Given the fact that we really didn't see the criteria and some of the stipulations until yesterday amidst Olympia falling, I think it makes a lot of sense I would love to, kind of go through a self-nomination process today to understand who's interested and who wants to throw their hat in the ring, but to be deliberative over the next month to make that decision.
And I would agree with both of you. There has been a push for this particular piece of our structure to be put in place. We have been dialoguing for quite some time, and I do know that there is a public and board member level of sensitivity as to how long it has taken us to get to this point. So I think absolutely we have the opportunity to do some nominations today and come back at our next meeting. But I do think we also want to keep that sense of urgency raised so that we are not continuing to push a very important conversation and decision forward for too long.
I think we have a lot of the structure now, we know what the role is. My question is, we didn't include a process for identifying a chair, right? Because I know a lot of boards, you have a nominating committee that comes up with a slate. And I thought we kind of had formed one of those at one point. So
yes, we did form a nominating committee, and the determination from the nominating committee was to, instead of sort of nominating a slate of proposed candidates, that we would instead allow for greater transparency and have the board self-nominate so that we know who's really interested and really committed to taking on the role. And the nomination committee can help to develop a formal process based on those self-nominations.
So if we are talking about going back to a process where there are self-nominations and then the nominating committee is massaging how that will move forward into a vote, we would want to expedite that conversation of the nominating committee to be fully prepared for discussion and vote next month. In my thinking.
Agreed, and I think that in order for us to really have an impactful 2021, I think that we need that delineation of roles between the chair and the staff. I think that's going to be critical. So I would not want to continue to push this down the road, but I don't want to sacrifice proper due diligence and deliberation. To Kelly's point, for expediency, I think that we can get this done at the February meeting, allowing, if we, go through a process today where we understand the interest and then we deliberate and come to February prepared to nominate a chair.
I think that's fantastic. Is there a lead that's been established in the nominating committee that would be pulling the group back together, or is that something that we need to determine today as well?
I'm going to defer to Jessica on that as to what her preference is, because it will be a labor of, it will be intensive for the URA staff as well. So I want to defer to her.
So before we do that, I have a question. I just want to be very clear about where we're at. So are we moving down the road of today, folks who are interested can self-nominate, that'll go to the committee, they'll have some discussion and then bring back in February a nomination? Because that I'm trying to figure out, like, if people are self-nominating themselves, and then, so who's the committee nominating? Is the committee going to go through all of the folks who have self-nominated and choose some folks out of that to bring back to the February meeting?
I think that's a great question, Jerome, and there isn't, in my opinion, from our discussion thus far, an answer to that yet.
So I'm thinking more or less, if we have people self-nominate, I don't know if a committee is much needed, but I would rather be ready to prepare to vote on a chair next month. Because it kind of sounds like if the nomination committee, we may not be voting next month on a chair with what I'm understanding the current process might be, or what we're looking at.
Again, I have to defer to Jessica, but what I will say is I think the nominating committee's role is just to tabulate and just to organize the information that's made available so that the board can make its deliberation and elect a chair. I don't think it's a matter of identifying who should be, offered to the board or not. I think it's just being able to help develop a process by which voting can occur on the candidates that come forward as self-nominees.
And it would appear that it would be critical, one of the critical pieces of this is that nominating committee would prepare some type of packet for board members to have that final conversation in February, whether that be the nominees' bios or something, so that, I mean, if what we're really hoping for is that deeper sense of deliberation on who will be the chair, it would be important to have information about that person to be able to make those decisions. I think many of us know each other quite well from just being in the same arenas for a long time, but it's important to have a sense of what a person is bringing to the table, skills. Part of our deliberation is always going to be, is this a person who will be an excellent chair to steward us forward in these very difficult conversations?
No, that actually makes sense. Yes. Having the committee do that makes sense. Yes. Okay.
I also think it would
Clarity
be,
where we are, the nominating committee, calling it that, sort of making it, sort of adding to the confusion. But basically, we're going to do a self-nomination. Those folks, then some staff are going to sort of take those folks, okay, submit your bios or whatever your credentials are that help us understand this. Our job for the rest of the board is to compare that with these chair responsibilities, using our insights and knowledge of these people, who's the best person that can do that based on what they're saying they can commit to, and be ready in February to make a final decision.
and do we actually have a list of who's eligible, just based on the bylaws that we adopted? It looks like anybody that hasn't been on the board for, anyone that's less than a year on the board, it couldn't be, it isn't eligible, and anyone that is a city or city agency employee isn't eligible either. So that whittles this list of folks that could serve down quite a bit. And again, that might be this committee's, to provide a list of folks that are eligible to serve as chair and vice chair.
And should they have a year left on their term, since this is a year position? And this is for chair and vice chair, correct? And I'm not sure if vice chair has the same requirements as the chair for time on the board.
Well, so in relationship to the vice chair, it does appear that it is the same criteria. And the vice chair, that's an interesting position that we've focused thus far on the chair, but the vice chair is an interesting role. A vice chair would be stepping forward at such time that the chair is not available, but also should be assisting the chair in making sure that all of the requirements for each meeting are in place. So we would be actually today, from what I'm hearing from the group in summary, today we would be asking for self-nominations. And then again, that conversation of chair and vice chair being part of the massaging in the nominating committee of just highlighting that in each role, the chair obviously is chairing the meetings. The vice chair is stepping in when the chair is not available. The vice chair would also be assisting to ensure that all of the elements for each meeting and all of the obligations of the board are being upheld through the process. So realistically developing a job description for each, that is something that folks are agreeing to. And that job description comes directly from the bylaws that we received and are accepting.
So can I just say, Teresa Kell-Smith, can I just say that I don't mind waiting, but I think we do have to set a deadline of when we will put this up for a vote, because I think it's important for the health of the board for us to move forward. But I also think that I want to make a really good decision, and I want people to know, what they're getting into before they actually do it. And I hear people having concerns, but I think we just can't keep putting it off and delaying it. That's all. I'd like to delay it one more time, one more month, do all the things that you need to do and set a deadline, and this is when we'll vote, because I think we need to vote.
Thank you.
Would it be possible today to at least accept nominations and for the next month to be used for those people who are nominated to be meeting with the board, talking about specifics of what they'd like to be in the position, how they'd like to, you know, be chair, vice chair, and then to take the vote next month?
Yeah, and I think that when those names come forward, as folks self-nominate, the staff can determine who's eligible versus ineligible, and that may be the criteria for whittling down the list simply based on the eligibility to nominate, and then the candidates that are left will be voted on in February.
That makes sense. Thanks, Diamante.
I have a clarification question on the responsibilities. It says confirm that an interpreter has been secured for the meetings. Is this really just confirming with staff, or is the chair expected to actually secure the interpreter?
Yeah, I saw that, Derek, as well, that was how HRNA had written that. So in accordance with the bylaws you just adopted, the chair is expected to secure the interpreter, but on that particular point, I'm sure the staff could be very helpful.
So it seems like in summary, the group is comfortable with taking self-nominations today, that the group is comfortable with a nominating committee coming back together to really solidify more of a distinct process, to collect information about the folks who have self-nominated, to allow the board members access to that information in whatever format may be determined, to assist each board member in making their determination for a vote that we would take in February for the chair and the vice chair roles. Does that sync up with what others are hearing?
Are you allowed to nominate others or just yourself?
Well, it suggests self-nomination. I think if you were going to nominate another person, it would be appropriate to speak to that person. We're face-to-face here, so I feel confident that the board could resolve that in the present moment as we're looking at each other. So I think that both would be acceptable. Jessica, do you see any conflict with that?
Yeah, I actually just saw it. I looked down. I think it's 5.3. Any board members other than the current chair may self-nominate or nominate someone else for the chair and vice chair positions.
It's just more of a issue of it's nice to talk to someone before you nominate them, but I think that we all could dialogue appropriately related to nominations that someone might not want to accept.
Yeah.
So hearing no other discussion or concerns, I would say that this would be the time to open up the floor to nominations.
Hi, this is Derek Tillman. I would like to self-nominate for the chair position.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Do we have other members that would like to self-nominate or nominate someone else?
So I would like to nominate Joanna Deming, if she will accept.
For which position?
For the chair, I'm sorry, for chair. I thought, so we're doing chair and then vice chair, just so I'm clear.
Yes,
right?
we are talking about the chair
Yeah.
at the moment. And Derek started us off with that position.
Mhm.
I would accept for either one, I guess.
Okay.
I would,
All right.
thank you.
Do we have other nominations from the group? Either self or another member of the advisory board?
To nominate Kelly for Vice President, Vice Chair. I haven't talked to her though, so sorry.
That's all right.
All
Sure,
right,
I'll accept,
Kelly.
I'll accept that nomination.
Great. I'm always shocked when this group is quiet. Well, it appears that we're not having a flood of nominations. Would the group like to really talk through how the nominations have emerged today, because it is a small group that have expressed their interest? Or do we still feel that we would like to go to the nominating committee? And would we like to allow members to self-nominate up until a certain point and still be considered through the process with the nominating committee? Because I would think we would have both options, as this format is just emerging now.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Andrea, that based on what's happening here right now, that we should give folks another week or so to self-nominate if they want, and have that deadline. And you know, because maybe people might need to just kind of look over some of this before they actually do that. So I would agree that we should have, you know, give people a week or so to be able to self-nominate and shut it down after that. So that would be
by the 15th?
The 15th, yeah, 14th or 15th would be the deadline.
Can I, oh, sorry, modify or perhaps a week to, yeah, so maybe a week to the 15th to nominate, and then maybe we haven't figured this out, but maybe a week after that to say for everyone self-nominated, and otherwise we get that list to put out some sort of statements for vision or what they'd like to do in that position. And then that would give us 2 weeks to review and be ready to vote on the 4th, because I do share the concerns about us not getting this buttoned up, but also not being hasty for the sake of being hasty, you know.
I'd also like to add to what Kelly just said, that folks can put out, in addition to their statement, resume, or as it would relate to this role, so people understand what everybody's background is. Because while we know, many of us know one another, we might not know everything about one another that would be relevant.
I have a bylaws related question regarding this. Now that we have bylaws that govern how we form subcommittees, do we need to reconvene the nomination committee under the bylaws?
Well, so if I'm understanding the bylaws correctly, the bylaws does not speak to the nomination committee. What the bylaws says, and I'll let David Geiger weigh in here too, if his interpretation is different, but basically what the bylaw says is, now that the bylaws have been approved, the means to getting a chair and a vice chair is through self-nomination or somebody nominating somebody else, but it does not speak at all to the nominating committee.
Okay. Is David able to clarify?
Yeah. Hey, Jessica. You're correct that that's how the bylaws under the chair and selection of the chair is written. However, if I'm listening to the advisory board's dialogue correctly, what you guys want to do is, and what you just did was have a self-nomination process for the chair and vice chair. But in between self-nomination and an actual vote, you guys want to have a nominating committee carry out some sort of business to help facilitate the election. And therefore, I would think under the new bylaws, you guys need to form a committee. I think it can be no more than 5 members to serve on a newly formed nominating committee. I know that over a year ago, I think there was one potentially formed, but not under these new bylaws. I think sort of for good form and good board governance, you should just go through the step here and create a nominating committee and make it formal.
And those guidelines for a working group are very simple, actually.
Yeah.
So it has been proposed by multiple board members that a group be convened. It is a new working group. It'll be run by a group chair, which I don't know that a chair has been determined, but I believe that we could address that matter of business today. And then the group chair would set the meeting times and create the agenda and would report back to the board. So I think that the structure for creating that working group has already emerged today. Unless there are concerns from other board members that that isn't enough.
My only question would be, does the nominating committee need to be comprised of those who are not either accepting a nomination or putting up a self-nomination?
I think that you would determine that today as we finalize that this is a committee and who the members would be and who the chair would be. If I'm reading this accurately, I think it's for each working group to determine its agenda and its membership. There's nothing that prohibits the working groups from limiting the folks that can become members of that group. David, is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's how I'm reading it. I think you guys need to, first of all, through a vote, confirm that you want there to be a nominating committee as a newly formed subcommittee. You need to select a chair for that committee, and the only rule here is that the board chairperson should not serve as the chair of any working group. And I think it would also, to your point, just be, while not prohibited, it would be good form, in my opinion, for the board to sort of discuss what would be appropriate sort of selection for members of a nominating subcommittee. And I would think to avoid conflicts of interest, you wouldn't want folks running to be part of the nominating committee.
So it appears that we're moving toward a vote to create a nominating committee. Would someone be willing to make the motion that we create a nominating committee to guide the chair and vice chair selection process for the HOF advisory?
I'll second.
Okay.
Wow, we got so much great energy to move forward with a nominating committee. So we would want to select a chair and identify committee members at this time, if that works into the agenda, Jessica.
Yes, that is fine.
Just a point of clarification, the formation of this doesn't negate us electing a chair and vice chair in February, right?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Do we have nominations for a chair for the nominating committee? I mean, I have one, so maybe I'll just put mine out there. I nominate Diamante Walker as the chair of the nominating committee.
I'll accept.
Do we have other nominations for chair of the nominating committee? In the absence of nominations, I request a motion to appoint Diamante Walker, the chair of the nominating committee.
So moved.
Thank you, Jamil. Do we have a second?
Second.
Fantastic.
Is this the point where I regret asking the question?
I'm sorry, Diamante, I overspoke you.
No, I was making a joke. I said, is this the point where I regret asking the question?
It might be.
We need to take the vote. Do we need to take the vote?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any members opposed? Any members abstaining? Thank you, everyone. Do we feel that we need to establish, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm abstaining. I think I need to abstain. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think you can vote for yourself.
Okay, yes vote.
Does the board feel comfortable doing the committee membership at this time, or would that be a better discussion for offline?
As the chair, I say that we can take it off, offline, but let's certainly make it public at the next meeting so that there's transparency.
What part would be public? That we have a committee, or who the
Yes,
members?
in the membership.
Right, okay, and we are still committed to seating the chair in February, right?
Absolutely.
So if the discussion
it's just
of committee membership is going to go offline, Jessica, is it appropriate for us to ask the URA to send an email alerting membership that they need to respond to either Diamante or another URA staff member?
Sure, we will send that email this afternoon, and I ask that people respond to me and Vatina, and we'll get that information to Diamante. You can copy Diamante as well, but we'll get that information to her and help her convene the nominating committee.
Is there a reason people wouldn't sign up now? I understand the meeting would be offline or whatever, but.
Yeah, I'm willing to, volunteer right now to serve on it. I don't know if others would be okay with that.
And again, if you are nominated for one of the roles, it appears that best practice would be not to participate in the nominating committee conversation.
And that was the reason why I was saying take it offline, because I know folks want to deliberate and maybe put their hat in the ring. And so I didn't want folks to have to nominate themselves for the committee today if they are still thinking about possibly taking on one of the roles. So that was the reason why I wanted to offer some grace for folks to be deliberative, but we still need to be transparent. So I will defer to you guys as professionals as to what makes the most sense for you. Happy to have anybody who's eligible serve on the committee.
I think that I see so many heads nodding that folks agree that going ahead and doing that email so folks can do two things, self-nominate and also request to be part of the nominating committee. So thank you so much, colleagues. This was a wonderful conversation.
I just want to sort of request that I think that the only thing that I feel really hesitant about the ability of folks to self-nominate for the next week until the 15th is that we are at a public meeting right now where people are watching. And I dislike the idea of being able to self-nominate and then us coming into the next meeting with the public not knowing who was nominated or who self-nominated. So I don't know the mechanism for this, but if you are deciding to self-nominate, can we ask either URA staff or to make public who has been nominated by the 15th, whether it be on our website, and just I dislike the idea of us going into next meeting not knowing who's nominated. So I'd like to.
As the chair, I will disclose the self-nominees from those who were nominated by others and make that fully transparent.
Thank you, Diamante. I expected nothing less.
No, I definitely like that idea, especially if people have strong feelings so that they could be prepared with, public comment for the February meeting to be able to address that and take that into consideration while we deliberate.
And that's a great final point related to this conversation. Is going to be critical for anyone who is in a leadership role related to this board, as it is for all members, to have that level of transparency at all times. So thank you for bringing that up, Megan. Fantastic point. Everyone, this was a great discussion. It's such a pleasure to work with all of you, and it's always refreshing to hear this level of commitment, diligence, and transparency.
And Adrian, thank you for agreeing to chair that portion of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Yes, excellent job, Adrian. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on in the agenda, we'll go over our programmatic expenditures and impacts like we do every month. And then we have a series of announcements related to affordable housing in general, not specific to the HOF or anything that you will need to vote on, but things that kind of overlap with the work of the HOF. So here with the programmatic expenditures and impacts, you can see the same slide that you see, every month you can see the housing stabilization program, you know, there's more and more yellow on the map every month. And the homeowner assistance program is still, you know, very active as well. Down payment closing cost is on there, and we're still, Jeremy, we're still seeing about 5 to 8 down payment closings a month.
Yeah, our average is about 10 a month now.
10 a month. Down payment closings. And then you can see, we talked about this last month, but the red dot downtown is the shelter, and those sprinklers are in, and funds dispersed for that. Next slide.
Just,
go ahead.
you may go into this, but with the HSP, the stabilization program, do you have it renter versus homeowner, or are the bulk of these renters, I'm assuming?
I would say probably over 90% are renters.
Just another general comment on that, the way that data was presented. I think we're going to have to start looking at a different way to present. There's other things that we need to be looking at, but the geographic dispersion amongst the 9 council districts is one of the goals of this. But pretty soon this map is going to be, you know, it's great. We've got a lot of pinpoints, but it's not going to be meaningful unless we're starting to break it. Maybe breaking it out separately, or, you know, trying to do something that makes it a little clearer.
Sure, your comments are very timely, Mark, because the URA is currently in the process of relooking at how we show our metrics. David and Diamante have someone on staff who's working. You guys know Jamie, she's working on that with us. And so stay tuned for updated dashboards. Next slide. So here's the rental gap program, for sale program. You know, we've talked about this in previous months. We're working on ways to outreach to the districts that are not as represented on this map. Next slide. And here is, you know, what has been allocated and what has been committed and closed and what has not yet been committed. This is out of the 30 million. So the 2018, 19, and 20 years. This does not obviously include the 2021, which we do not have yet. So roughly about 10 million out of the 30 million that we have received to date. We're still in the process of committing. Next slide. And you can see unit counts, you know, so the demonstration, of course, we've talked about this in the past, is high because of the shelter. But if you take that out of the equation, you can still see the unit counts there. The housing stabilization program is well over 1,000 people helped at this point. Down payment and closing costs, if you add those 3 columns up, you're at about 175 folks that have purchased their first home through this program in the city, which is just fabulous. The homeowner assistance program, if you add those up, you can see that we are about 250 people, and and some of those folks are still, you know, they're still in the process of getting their houses bid. They're not fully complete, but they are all in the process. And then the for sale program at 35 and the rental gap program at 350. So we're going to move towards, actually, I think there's another slide after this, right? Yeah, okay. So the legal eviction prevention program, I'm going to pass it over to Jeremy, but he has been very busy holding working groups with a bunch of community folks to get an understanding of how to draft the guidelines for this program. So I'm going to pass it off to Jeremy.
Thanks. So this is in response to the legal assistance line item that the advisory board added for the 2021 allocation. This is all, we are preparing to launch an RFP for this program sometime in February. So for the month of January, we are holding a series of meetings with different stakeholders around eviction prevention and legal aid to really understand and hear from them what is working within the legal aid system, what isn't working, and any rooms for opportunity or innovation. So we have several meetings set up with Neighborhood Legal Services, the Bar Association, tenant advocates, and mediation, and just trying to hit different points of this entire process to hear from everyone kind of what they're seeing on the ground is in terms of what's working. These series of meetings will then help guide us on program design. We will try to synthesize everything and get common themes to really guide what the program guidelines will look like. So that is the update right now with the goal of doing an RFP in February.
Jeremy, question. So is this, I see legal eviction prevention program, is that essentially the title of the RFP?
No, it's going to be legal assistance because the advisory board wanted that to be for homeowners and renters. So I don't know yet if we are just going to have the homeowner legal aid just kind of building off of the HAP Tango Title legal aid, because that's also homeowner legal aid, or if we're going to lump it into this one program. But what we're hearing so far is the legal aid network really wants those to be separate because they're very different activities.
Okay, that's fine. That's really what I was alluding to, that, you know, clearly renters need that assistance, but that we're ensuring that we're capturing the need for homeowners as well. But you spoke to that.
This be getting at some of the reimbursement issues and.
Yeah, so we've been talking with Neighborhood Legal, and whatever new program that will be created, we need to work on a way to get them to operate under that program with their existing grant funding.
So is the intent to issue 2 separate RFPs? One for renters, one for homeowners?
If that ends up, you know, being the way that we're hearing from the groups, that's how they want it to be structured, then most likely it'll be 2 different ones.
Okay, if there's not any more questions on that, we'll move on to the next slide. So a few general updates, and Jeremy can delve into this. We did receive, I think we probably announced in a previous meeting that we received through City Council an allocation of CDBG, what we call CV3 funds, $2 million of CDBG funding coming through to COVID relief. That is for HSP. The URA at our February board meeting will be going forward with the following awards out of the CDBG CV3 funds to keep the program, you know, operating smoothly. So you can see those awards listed there. Jeremy, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
And then second on the slide here, you know, update on the federal stimulus package to Coronavirus Relief Fund. So as I think some of you are aware, you know, in the Coronavirus Relief Fund that the federal government has been, you know, highly discussing, the U.S. Treasury has a very large line item for rental assistance. This occurred via the CARES Act, via the first round of stimulus. At the time, the money, as most of you know, went to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency and on to the county at that point. In that particular legislation, cities had to have at least 500,000 people to be able to get their own allocation. This time around, for the new round that's called the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the cities and/or counties have to have a population of 250,000 for their own allocation. So the URA and the city of Pittsburgh is working very quickly on this to submit everything needed for the city to receive a direct allocation of rental assistance funding, and the URA and the city are working in tandem and working very fast because this money is coming very fast and furious. We will have more to report in upcoming weeks, but I just wanted for public benefit for everyone to know that we are working on this. Staff has been super busy reading the rules and regulations. We have talked to lots of people, external, customers and community representatives. Jeremy and I just got off the 8 a.m. call on this morning when we were talking to various advocates and also folks in Philadelphia and other parts of the state. We're all working on this together. We're all getting mobilized very quickly, and stay tuned for more information. Next on the list is the release of the Easton Housing RFP. Evan, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So the East End Housing Development Program is basically a pot of money generated by the East Liberty TRID that is earmarked specifically for affordable housing development in the East Liberty TRID boundary. So that's half a mile from the East Liberty Transit Center. So starting this past spring, we worked with the Housing Committee for the East Liberty TRID to create program guidelines. And that kind of went through the summer, and those were approved this past fall. And then just yesterday, we've now released the East End Housing Development Program's RFP on the URA's website for interested applicants that have projects within the boundaries. So there's going to be a pre-application meeting on Friday, January 22nd at 9:30 in the morning on Zoom. And there's more information on that meeting and the RFP in general on the URA's website right now, if you were to go to our proposals section. So just wanted to make the advisory board aware of that and share it with your networks if you know of anything that might fall into this program's purview.
Thanks, Evan. And the last announcement on here, once again, not directly related to HOF advisory board, but indirectly related in the respect that a lot of the projects you've seen for the rental gap program are tax credit projects. PHFA just recently announced that they are pushing back their due date a little bit, and the due date for the 2021 9% tax credit applications is March 5th, 2021. And the URA is working with several developers who responded to our pre-application to help look at their budgets and to start to get an understanding of what type of gaps they will the projects have moving forward. So that's where we are with all that. Are there any questions about general housing announcements?
A question about the first item, the Urban League. I know there was some challenges, at least our ambassadors were having, because of all the additional documentation being required from the applicants. I was just wondering, maybe Adrian can speak a little. I thought they were not going to be working on the program, so I guess I may have completely misunderstood. It looks like they're one of the main players. So.
Yeah, Urban League is our top performer right now within our 11 providers. They are not working with the Community Engagement Ambassador service. They're kind of doing their own, but the CEA services are still assisting the other 10 agencies.
And we did service the Urban League through the first 3 months of the program.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Jessica, you may know this better than anyone. I know with the last federal stimulus package that included rent relief, there were some details that were problematic, and it left a lot of the dollars kind of unspent because property owners, property managers, even developers didn't actually accept some of the way it was structured. Do we know with this new, relief fund, if we have those same kind of stipulations, or if it's been changed to make it more, acceptable to property?
Right.
I could take that, Jessica.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
So with the Treasury money, which is the CRF funds, they don't have the same restrictions as the CARES Act funding did. So I think what you're speaking to, Derek, was that, if the landlord didn't really accept the payment, then they were kind of out of luck and couldn't really do anything. With the Treasury CRF money, they have specifically put in their guidelines that if a vendor, such as a utility company or a landlord, doesn't accept it, then the agency can issue the funds directly to the household so that they can pay the bill.
Okay.
Could I ask Adrian, when will there be another RFP for the ambassador program, or what's the status of that?
That is actually a discussion that's taking place this month. We've provided some information to the URA. The URA is having some internal discussions, and I actually had planned on sending Jeremy an email this morning to ask when we could reconvene for that conversation. As that emerges, we will definitely make sure that there are updates provided to the board.
Anything else? If there's nothing else, I think the final announcement is that the next meeting is, here, a reminder as always, 211 is the number for people to call for any housing assistance in the city. They will help navigate that. And the next HOF Advisory Board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 4th at 9 a.m. Can someone make a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Eric and Kelly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone oppose adjournment? All right, motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thanks for.